Okay. I hope you guys can hear me now. I don't know what happened, man. Just arbitrarily, all the audio on my computer just quit. Like, just click. So, yeah. That was a bummer because I really wanted to finish up with Emma. So we're going to have to bring her back on the program to do that. I had to do a full reboot. All right, well, we're 30 seconds out from rejoining. I'm hoping Shelley Hughes got the new link. So we're going to be... it started the show over because I just restarted the whole stream. All right, we're going to be back. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out themichaeldukesshow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Duke Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Yep, as G. Gordon Liddy used to say, cheap East German equipment. We had a bit of I don't know what happened, but basically the radio was fine, but I lost all audio to everything else in the last hour. At the end of the last hour with our guest Emma Camp from Reason Magazine. And it was disappointing because she is a great guest, and we're going to have her back on here shortly to talk about that. But you can go back and watch it on the podcast or on the replay, or listen to it on the podcast if you want. I got most of the stuff from her. And it's unfortunate that we missed the last 8 minutes or so, but that's okay. We're back. We're ready to go. Shelley Hughes is joining us this morning here. She's just coming on board because I had to switch streams, so her link didn't work, and now it works, and I could see that she's in the green room ready to go. We're going to be talking with her about SB 173. And everything else that's going on in the legislature. So this should be a fun discussion. Fingers crossed that no gremlins are in the machine here, and we'll get it all squared away for today. But let's get started with State Senator Shelley Hughes. She joins us. She joins us right now. Good morning, Shelley. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Michael. Good to be here.
Well, thanks for coming on board, and I apologize. You were still logged into the last. I had to stop the broadcast and restart. So you had the old one, and now you got the new one, and it's all good. So let's get started this morning talking about the most important thing I think for today, which is the movement on SB 173. Your bill about, arming teachers who want to be armed, the procedures, the training, everything else. There's some movement on this bill. Give us the rundown of what's happening with it before we get into the specifics.
Well, I will say when I very first came to the Capitol I think it was before we gavelled in, was speaking with the Senate president about various things coming up, and he mentioned that he really liked the bill. And I said to him, well, if it goes to the Education Committee, it will die. And the next day when the referrals were read across the floor, it was not referred to the Education Committee. It was referred to the Senate Labor and Commerce. And Senator Bjorkman did schedule it. We had a hearing probably a month or more ago, and we ran out of time for public testimony. We had folks lined up, and on the record, it was said, we would pick it up again for public testimony. So it's taken a few weeks, but we are up tomorrow at 1:30. We are listed first on the schedule. Of course, that's always subject to change, as you know, Michael. And so I would ask those that will and I'm actually pleading with people. I need people to call in and be very brief and concise. I recommend that so it doesn't drag out. Just a sentence or two. Do not have to eat up the full 2 or 3 minutes, but just say you support the bill, because it's often just a tally, and that's important to some legislators. For me, Michael, on bills, I have, well, go back to protect girls sports. I knew that it was 70-80% of Alaskans across the state support protecting girls sports, but what reflected down here in the building with the testimony and the call-ins and those showing up, it was very much flipped. It was more like 80% were against it and 20% more were for it. So, but to many legislators are really listening, and if the opposition comes out stronger down here, they're hesitant to move out the bill. So I really appreciate you having me on, because I think it is important for the silent majority not to be silent on this one if we care about our children, and we can certainly talk about the specifics of that bill. But yeah, it's up tomorrow. Public testimony. I will also say Moms Demand Action have been in the building this week. If you're not familiar with that group, they're all about gun restrictions. So I'm very aware that they are aware that the bill is up on Friday, and I do expect them to have testimony lined up against the bill.
Yeah, no, I mean, and of course they're against anything like this. I've always found it amazing that we put armed guards in banks, we put armed guards in, in legislatures and in Capitol buildings. We put armed guards all over the place, but for some reason, our most precious resource is their children, and we refuse to allow people to be armed to protect our children in those areas. To me, it makes no sense. You should, especially if you've got a teacher that is willing and able to take on that responsibility, is willing and able to go through the training and do everything else to be able to defend them, not only the children, but themselves, obviously. That is, to me, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, it's absolute common sense, and it's actually more in common sense. It's more important here in Alaska, I think, than in other states. And we had a superintendent from Ohio who conceals carry, and he has certain staff who conceals carry, and he testified at our first hearing. And the reason their district wanted it was because they're 20 minutes from what the sheriff being able to arrive. 20 minutes. What are we in this state? 85% of our communities are off the road system.
Right.
Even in the Mat-Su borough, the troopers have said they cannot guarantee getting to some of our schools in under an hour. Okay, now you're talking villages. And by the way, we have village police safety officers. We have tribal officers in villages, but a lot of people don't know they are unarmed. They are not armed. So our children, our school staff, they are sitting ducks in our schools, and it's not right. We have armed guards here in the Capitol.
Yeah,
what hypocrites we would be if we as legislators aren't allowing protection for our children. And one of the things that's frustrating to me is how everything gets pushed to with a partisan divide. And to me, this should not be. It absolutely should not be a left versus right issue. It really shouldn't be. You're right. Our children are our most precious resource, because I can win any debate with an anti-gun person by asking the question, Michael, if you, as an anti-gun person, if your 5-year-old kindergarten daughter were at gunpoint by a deranged gunman, would you want someone on site to stop that person?
Yeah.
And I challenge any of them to tell me no, they wouldn't want one. They would want someone there. And that's what it's about. It's about the response time. Our law enforcement does its best to get there quickly. But these incidents are over. Typically, it's 2 to 5 minutes an active shooter.
Well,
and
and
even in an urban area, they may not get there in time.
Well, and even, I mean, we saw what happened in Uvalde. They stood around for, 60 plus minutes outside while they say, so even if you're in an urban area, these things can happen and go wrong. Now, maybe that's an outlier, but I wouldn't want to be one of the ones that had to deal with the pain of the outlier. It was the guy outside of the outside of the Florida school, who the security guard, the police officer who stood outside while the Parkland shooter went crazy. I mean, it happens. So yes, to have more people concealed, armed inside, I think is a good call, because again, you just never know. It gives them pause in that kind of situation. Let's talk about the details of the bill, though. So what exactly does SB 173 authorize? Is this everybody carries a hog leg, or it's a specific component, or, is there training? Give me the full rundown here.
Can you hold that question just a second? Because you mentioned Uvalde, and I want to mention I have not read the whole Uvalde report, but it came out about a month of it, and I've read
Yeah.
parts of it. And one of the things, the cowardice of that officer, one of the things they realized that police departments across the nation were not requiring active shooter training. And so part of the recommendations out of that report is that every police department require 8 hours of active shooter training per year. And that active shooter training would be in many different kinds of environments, not just schools. It would be malls, parking lots, any kind of situation, right? So, now to pivot to your question, the bill in a perfect world and where we had the votes, we could simply say schools shall allow concealed carry. Right now, it's up to our superintendents, and since statehood, they are not allowing it. Now, I am hearing, I'm hearing that certain superintendents have very quietly, without making a policy that went before a school board, certain superintendents have allowed certain individuals, principals, to conceal carry. I also know that some of those who are very supportive of this bill, one of them being Donna Anthony, has conducted many firearm trainings and is very aware that teachers are taking her training and that they likely are concealed carrying in the school. So we do have some scattered folks that are doing it, but right now it is not an official policy that is open in our various districts across the state. So one of the things to build back to the 8 hours minimum that the police departments are supposed to be starting up, this bill would require specific training for a school environment, the initial training being 4 days, 32 hours. And there we have in the bill as kind of a standard, a training program that's designed specifically for schools. And we had the founder in our invited testimony in the first hearing. He has trained thousands of school personnel across the states. And, there are a number of states, including some purple states, that allow this. So it'll be interesting how this goes. I am not sure. I think there might be the votes to get it out of committee. I think that is the chair's intention, but we will see how it goes. These Senate committees have unusual makeup. There are more Democrats in the majority right now than Republicans. So we'll see how it goes. But there were really good questions. We had excellent testimony. And we, like I said, we had a superintendent in the lower 48. We also had a school nurse who concealed carries, and she could not disclose her state or her community, as it's part of their policy, not to let anyone know which individuals in the district are concealed carrying. And, that makes a lot of sense. So I think we have a good foundation for the bill. And back to your question, you wanted to know details, right?
The specifics. Yeah. I mean, the specifics. I got about 3.5 minutes here. I don't know if you can do it in that amount of time, but at least we can get started on what is a requirement, who qualifies, what is the training required, what is the details.
So the requirement is that districts shall uses the word shall assign the duty of concealed carry. So it's a job duty to willing staff who meet the criteria. And that criteria involves meeting the psychological and medical assessment at the standard of the Alaska Police Standard Council. And by the way, that does not mean they have to be able to run up Mount Marathon in record time. It just means, basic medical screening. And then they need to go through this initial training that's specific for school environments, which is a 4-day training. Of course, they need to have the concealed carry permit. So, there needs to be coordination, the district's coordination with law enforcement. So law enforcement knows who those individuals are. that the school district makes available to the law enforcement, training dates, drill dates, that could be during the school year as well, over the summer when students aren't in the building. So good communication. Also, that in any of the crisis plans that are required, there is one that schools have to, that is public and made available to law enforcement, that does not include who these individuals are and where they're located in the buildings. There's technology too. This isn't in the bill, but it would make sense. There's technology, of course, where the police could know exactly where those teachers are, or it could be a janitor, it could be someone else who is concealed carrying. So when they arrive at a shooting scene, they would know who the good guys are and where they are that are concealed carrying.
I think that's I think that is the minimum of what we should have. I mean, again, if we've got armed guards, in banks and courthouses and Capitol buildings and all these other things, why wouldn't you have armed people? And many schools do. Many schools have police officers and things in them. We don't happen to have that. But again, this idea that somehow we can just lock them away and they'll be safe. If we just put barriers up and do all, shootings have happened in schools that were hardened, right? It has happened. I mean, this is not an unusual thing. And if you just expect that they'll just wait until the police officers can get there, again, you pointed out in the Mat-Su, it could be 20 minutes. It could be 30 minutes. It could be an hour. I mean, if I made a call right now to the troopers to come to my house, it's going to be at least 30 minutes before they get to my house, let alone a school that's in a more rural area out in Willow or Talkeetna or Houston or something like that. That's just in this area, let alone some bush community. We need to be able to have people who have, and we saw this shooting that happened out in at Point Hope here just the last few days. Now that was a domestic thing, but it's not to say that, a shooting at a school couldn't happen in these areas as well. Wouldn't it be better to have people who could be on site and be able to defend those people right now?
Yeah, absolutely, Michael. And an important thing to consider is this is all about deterrence as well. Because right now, if there's a crazy person who wants to wreak havoc and harm people, where are they going to go? They're not going to walk in a state where close to 70% own guns and many people are concealed carry. That person is not going to want to walk into a restaurant or a shopping mall or a grocery store. Where are they going to go? They're going to go to a school-free zone. Our schools should not be, gun-free zone.
Yeah.
Our schools should not be gun-free. If just the fact that they would know that there would be people concealed carry very likely would deter. Because I tell you, if we don't take care of this, it's not a matter of if there's going to be a shooting incident in one of our Alaskan schools. It's a matter of when. And I challenge any lawmaker who is trying to obstruct this. When that happens, if we haven't passed this or something very similar, those legislators are going to have to look back really hard at stopping this kind of policy in our schools. We need it. Our kids are sitting ducks to a greater degree than kids anywhere else in the U.S.
Shelley Hughes, our guest. We got to go. We're going to be back with more in a moment. The Michael Dukes Show, Common Sense Radio.
Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, man. Okay, we just about hit the hard stop there, so we got to make sure if you start hearing the music to slow down for a second. All right. No, look. Here's the thing. I know some people are outraged about, can't the kids and the thing. And I'm going to repeat this when we get back to the radio, but Dr. John Lott, who is the author of More Guns, Less Crime, The War on Guns, and some other stories. He's a statistician. He's the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center. And he did a study and analyzed the writings of a whole bunch of these shooters. And in something like 80% of the cases in their writings and in their journals and their mad manifestos and everything else, they talk about specifically targeting gun-free zones. They know they considered going to point A, but then realized that the people at point A might be armed, so they chose point B, usually a school. In fact, that was late last year. There was a shooting down in it was in Texas, where the shooter was going to go to one school, but then realized that there was armed guards at that campus and decided instead to go to the second school where there was no armed guards.
Did you say John Lott's material said 80% of the shooters go through this process of thinking about whether it's gun free or not?
Of the ones that have written, of the study, the ones that actually wrote, so the ones that had written plans and stuff, they looked at it, and something like 80% of them mentioned the fact that they're looking for that they were looking for a gun-free zone. And in fact, if you want to have, Dr. Lott would be a fantastic.
Actually, I do have his contact information. We're going to reach out to him. And actually, this would be interesting to your broader audience. We've also been in touch with one of the fathers whose daughter was killed in the Parkland shooting, and he was unable to testify because of a medical incident in his family. They were at the hospital, our first hearing, but he's interested this time. Of course, we don't have space for invited testimony, but he may be a very brief public testimony. But yeah, I have been given the information. I have people from across the country that have worked on this in other states and have John Lott's information, and probably will touch base with him just as a resource. I think that the goal, as you know how it is in the legislature, all the bills backed up, it's to get this bill moving along now. And we can talk about its prospects probably on the air when everybody's back. But the idea is get this moving.
No, I mean, to me, this just makes sense, that, if you have people who are willing and able to go through the training and do what's needed to be done and to be able to protect themselves. I'm still saddened by the teacher who was, it wasn't Uvalde, it was one of the other ones where he was near retirement, and he basically gave his own life to protect the lives of his students.
I think that was in Iowa. In January.
And he tackled the gunman himself and took the bullet and saved his students. And I mean, if you have some ability to defend yourself, at least it would equalize the field at that point. But this idea that somehow because you've hardened the schools and you've created barricades, you've locked it down, or even if you put metal detectors in, that has not stopped people. Bad people are going to do bad things. And if they've made a decision to do a bad thing, they will try and circumvent everything that they can. And the hardening of the schools it makes it more difficult. Absolutely. And I'm not saying they shouldn't harden the schools. I'm just saying that at that point, if they're inside there, then it's like a fishbowl. Then it's just like, nobody else can get in and you're waiting for the police. Meanwhile, they have free reign in the school. That makes no sense whatsoever.
Right. And I have said on the record that I support doing those front end preventions, the hardening, let's do it. But people do get through those. And so what is your backstop? What are you going to do on the back end? And that's what this bill is about. It's about the stopgap if those front end hardening measures don't keep the person out.
Yeah. Shelley Hughes is our guest. We're going to continue here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense, Liberty-Based, Free Thinking Radio. Let's get to it. Here we go.
The Michael Duke Show, proudly splitting the left versus right dichotomy. Yeah, I had to look that word up too. I don't think it means what he thinks it means. Here he is, though. That guy, Michael Dukes, the one with the show.
Okay, State Senator Shelley Hughes is our guest. We're talking about SB 173, which would allow for a process for teachers to be armed to concealed carry in the classrooms. It includes training requirement, physical fitness, a bunch of different things. 34 hours, that's a significant amount of training for teachers, specifically tailored for a school setting and an active shooter school setting. And as I was saying during the break, Dr. John Lott is a guest on the program quite frequently. discussed that in going through the manifestos and plans of those shooters who left behind manifestos and written plans and things like that, in going through a lot of that, it's something like 80% of the time they mentioned somewhere in their writings about how they were choosing targets, and they were always looking at targets that were gun-free zones. That in fact that we were talking about down in Texas here a couple months ago, where the shooter went to one school and discovered that there were armed guards on that campus, and then immediately changed his target to a second school that didn't have armed guards. The presence of a firearm to prevent them or slow them down, I mean, it scares them. It terrifies them. They don't want that. They want the non-resisting, gun-free zone where they can go in and have impunity. Because generally speaking, once somebody with a firearm on the scene shows up to oppose them, they generally speaking usually retreat and kill themselves. That's usually what happens. They retreat to a corner and stop themselves. In a lot of cases. And so, again, the presence of a firearm, especially the uncertainty of not knowing who is armed and who is not, may give them pause to attack some of these facilities. And places like Utah have been doing this now. Texas has got some districts that are doing it. I mean, it's because, again, it's the last line of defense. And when seconds count, police are only minutes away, right? That's the old axiom. If it's over in 2 or 3 minutes, in many cases, it takes that long just to get in the car and drive 5 blocks, to get there in 2 or 3 minutes. This is not, you need somebody on site who has the training, and that's what you need.
Yeah, and just so you know, we do have school resource officers, a few of them sprinkled across this district, and some particularly in the urban areas. And these are law enforcement officers who've gone through some school-specific training. And they're great, and we're glad to have the ones we do in our schools. But as an example, Matsu School District has 5 school resource officers, and I believe we have 48 or 49 school buildings. Anchorage has some school resource officers also, and their primary spot is in one of the high schools, but they're also responsible for the middle schools, the 2 middle schools that feed into that high school, and the elementary schools that feed into those middle schools. So they just simply can't be everywhere, and there aren't enough. And so some who are, generally anti-gun people are, well, just hire more school resource officers. Well, that's a very nice thought. However, right now, nationally, we have a law enforcement shortage, thanks to those who want to defund the police and just people not stepping up. So it is absolutely unrealistic. It's impractical, and it's not going to happen. You're not going to have enough school resource officers. It's also very expensive when you bring them in, and that's the only duty. If we have willing teachers who are vetted and well trained, we are just adding a job duty to them for an incident that might occur. So don't tell me just put more school resource officers. That's a solution. That's not going to happen, and we can't do it. So there aren't the employees in the school resource officer pipeline to do that, nor the funds. The other thing, when we were talking about deterring, and just that these crazy shooters are looking for a gun-free zone, there are some states and some schools in my research where they actually post signs on the outside of the school building to say that there are staff trained and caring. So that's an interesting concept. That's something I saw after we filed our bill. We haven't put it in there, but a district is free to set that policy and certainly do that. But that's a unique thing, and I think it would definitely be a deterrence. The other thing I want to mention, that I was very, very upset with the Alaska Beacon, and I let them know it, because their article after the bill, I can't remember if it was after our first hearing. Yeah, it was after our first hearing. Immediately, right out of the gate, I shouldn't be surprised, but I was still very frustrated because they made it a left-right issue by their headline. Their headline was very misleading. It said something about Hughes wants volunteers to conceal carry in schools or something, require volunteers to conceal carry in schools. Like we were going to open up the wild, wild west and then just invite anybody off the street to come in and, walk around our school hallways, concealed carrying. That's what the headline implied. And that is not what the bill does. And the goal is to have a well-vetted, trained staff. But we're very cognizant, and having myself lived in very small villages where you have a really tiny school, maybe only a couple of teachers, and you might not have either one of them. Let's say there are only two teachers or one teacher, and they're just not interested. That's not their forte. They don't want that responsibility. Yet you might have someone in the community who's retired military, retired law enforcement, someone who would be willing to step up and be vetted and be trained. And so it would allow the district to assign the duty to someone in the community like that, but they still have to meet all the same criteria. So we're not talking about the Wild West here. And I reached out to the reporter and really blasted him on that, because when you make this a partisan issue, it's an attempt. It's sensationalism on their part, trying to get readers to draw to the article.
No, that wouldn't happen.
But it also set up the opposition. And after that article went, I heard from I heard from quite a few who just are anti-gun people, and they didn't really understand it. But it was fascinating debating some of them, because they cannot win the debate, Michael. They cannot win it, especially when I asked the question that I mentioned earlier. Would you want someone to stop the deranged shooter who's got a gun pointed at your small child? And they just can't win it, and they'll try to say, put reinforce the school resource officers. Nope, there aren't enough. That's not going to work. You can't do that. We don't have them. They're not available. They just cannot win the argument.
No, and again, having the unknown component. See, that's the other thing that really catches a lot of these shooters, is the unknown component. The Greenville Mall shooting is one that really comes to mind, because there's a shooter who stepped into a mall that was known to be a gun-free zone. Usually in those kind of situations, if there does happen to be an armed security guard or a marked security guard, they're usually the first target because they're visible and they could be seen. But it is the unknown concealed carry shooter who, in this case, was able to stop the shooter before he injured anyone. And that's that unknown component. Somebody who has the training, has the willingness to be able to go through there. They can stop those things before they ever, get started or go too far. That's the whole point of basically diffusing these gun-free zones, is giving people the opportunity to protect themselves and others. I mean, I've carried a gun since I was 18 years old, every day. And it's not because I live in fear. I don't live in fear, because I know that I'm prepared in case something happens. I can protect myself and other people. Not that I think that it's going to happen today or tomorrow, but maybe one day if it does, at least I am prepared for that kind of situation.
Yeah, we hope it deters it too. I had a conversation with an Anchorage elementary teacher who's very supportive of the bill. By the way, I've heard from teachers who support it. And the teachers already talked to other faculty at that particular school, and they've already figured out, the 3 or 4 that are willing and would want to do it if the bill passes. And he mentioned that there was one time I don't know how recently this was, but I had the impression it was not that long ago, that there were kids, elementary school kids, out on the playground for recess, and a moose started coming towards the kids. And, the kids were on cross-country skis. Now, how awkward is that to try to run with cross-country skis, right? And they're trying to get these kids inside. And there was an incident, I don't remember where it was, way up north, where a polar bear was hanging out outside of school. Every school ought to have a rifle, probably in a biometric storage unit for that kind of incident. But the bill does allow districts to put biometric lockers in, and that would be a great thing to do. If that moose would have charged those kids, there was nothing that could have been done in time to save the child. So that's another reason. Not only do we have relatively few law enforcement spread over hundreds and hundreds of miles, but we also have wildlife, and that would make sense. I just thought I'd throw that in. I hadn't thought of that scenario, but it is a real one.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
it happens. I had 2 moose bedded down in my backyard night before last, and then the dogs kept wanting to go out. I'm like, nope. You just never know. You don't want to have to do that. But if the kids are outside and the moose wander in, there was another video this morning of kids on a cross country ski trail, and the moose just walk out of the woods, and the kids try and get over, and and they're just not moving, and it's just one of those things. We live in it. It's not like we live in downtown, LA or something. It's a whole different scenario. So Shelley, again, the hearing is tomorrow in Senate Labor and Commerce. What time?
It's at 1:30, and I always advise folks, there are often delays. It does happen, and sometimes the order of the hearings can be flipped around. So if you're going to call in, I'd be incredibly grateful, but please be prepared because you might be on the phone for a while. You might want to call in early so you're closer to the front of the queue, but have something to do while you wait because you very likely will wait. But again, the voices of the opposition, we expect them to be out there. So we need the common sense people across the state to join in. And as far as what I expect, I think it is, as I said earlier, the chair's intention to move the bill out. One of the questions that came up was whether the districts would be required to pay for this. And I said on the record, districts complain often about unfunded mandates. And I said on the record that I believe public safety is a very appropriate role for the government. And I think the state should cover the cost. And I would support that. And really, technically, you shouldn't have, when the state mandates something, they should cover it in most cases. So definitely in this case, we provided an amendment to make that very clear, the language. And so whether that gets added or not. Now, if it gets added, it would receive a finance referral. And as I mentioned, for those listeners who weren't on at the beginning, the Senate president has indicated support for this bill. And talking to other Republicans in our Senate, in our majority, there is support. I believe there are 11 or 12 votes. And because of that, if the bill goes to the next committee, right now it's referred to Judiciary. I think if it goes to that committee, it might get killed. So if it gets a finance referral, again, I think it would stand a better chance.
All right, Shelley Hughes, our guest tomorrow, Senate Labor and Commerce Committee, 1:30 p.m. We got some contacts. We'll get some phone numbers and stuff out for you as well. We got one more segment dead ahead. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
Our light, our guide, and our trusted friend. Michael Duke Show.
Michael, if I reply to the email with the link, could you get it? Does it come to you?
I don't know. Probably. If you need me to send you an email, oh yeah, it will, because I think it came from my email. I think it came from my email address. So yeah, if you want to send me something.
Okay, because what I was going to send you, if I can do it, is send you an image, actually, that has all the call-in information, all that good stuff.
Okay.
So you'd have at the time. Let's see. I think I have it. Okay, here it's coming your way.
Yeah. Just shoot it on over to me and I'll post it up, and I'll put it up on my Facebook page as well, so folks can see it and get a chance to answer that and participate in it right there. So I will look to see if I got it here. Pretty sure that because Emma responded and it came right back to me. So
did it come through at your end? Are you seeing
I'm
it?
looking right there. New right there. Open attachment. There we go. Okay. Yep. Sponsors, news, blah, 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 blah. Call to testify. Got it right there. Yep. I've got it all. And so I will, I'll save this and post it up. We'll put it up there and people can take a look at it. Okay. we're all good on that. And
And tomorrow on your Firearms Friday show, can you mention it too for your?
Oh yeah. No, we'll talk about it specifically tomorrow and get more people involved. Let me transform this to fit the screen. There we go. All right. So I got it. Okay. So we'll just do like this, and people can see that is
awesome.
Call in to testify, public testimony. There are the phone numbers. So there's a whole bunch of phone numbers there, whether you're in Juneau, whether you're in Anchorage, whether you're anywhere else in the fray. There are all the phone numbers. And again, it's tomorrow at 1:30. So you can get squared away on that. Okay. Greg says, finally, a common sense bill. Yeah, that's some good stuff. So write down those phone numbers right now. If you're in the Anchorage area, 907-563-9085 for the Anchorage area. And that's, let me put that here in the chat. That's,
and all three of those numbers work from anywhere actually.
Okay. So 844-586-9085 from anywhere. All right. I just posted those up in the chat room so you can take a look at those. And you can testify if you want to call in and be part of that for tomorrow. Okay. So that's good stuff. I want to talk a little bit here before we go, Shelley, in the final segment about the education bill, about everything else, the defined benefits, anything else that's coming on in the legislature, what you think is what you think you're going to see there. And so I would love to talk about that as we go through here. Boy, YouTube, we had a viewer on YouTube, apparently from some other country, who was just losing his mind over the whole gun thing. And apparently they just don't understand American, it's baked into our DNA. The ability to defend ourselves is baked into our DNA. And it's just something that we want to do. Again, but I do want to, this one comment that really bothers me, because it seems to be the answer that we're seeing a lot. Instead of armed people inside schools should be locked and secured with police trained to respond within a minute of call. I mean, that in an ideal world, that would be great, except for the fact that, hardened, locked schools have been penetrated. There have been shootings there, and the police are never a minute away. Even in an urban community, it could take as long as 5 minutes for the police to get there. Mm-hmm. And by that time, statistically, much of the damage has already been done. And so having somebody on site, on hand at the moment seems, to me, to make the most sense.
Right. And one of the arguments the other side will also use is the risk of a negligent discharge. But that's not realistic, because first of all, the safety training, the 4 days of training would be so much emphasizing, and that weapon would be on the person's body. It's not going to be in a drawer where a kid's going to be able to get it in sitting on a shelf or something. It's going to be on the person's body. And these days it takes the finger, right? Actually pulling the trigger. It takes action to pull that trigger. So the whole argument of an accidental shooting discharge, it doesn't fit this scenario at all.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's just one of those things where it's every boogeyman that they can think of, because they don't, because they dislike guns or anything else, always discounting the fact that criminals, by their very definition, are going to break the law. And once they've decided to break the law, then there's nothing you can do to stop them other than to use the same force that they're going to try and use. That's the only thing. It's the only thing you can do. All right. We are 10 seconds out, rejoining the radio here. The Michael Duke Show. Please like and share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff. Let's get back to it. Shelley Hughes, our guest, The Michael Duke Show. Okay. We're continuing now. Shelley Hughes, our guest. We're changing gears just a little bit. we're going over to the SB 140, which is the education bill that was passed out of the House and then into the Senate, and now the governor has said he doesn't want to sign it unless he gets his specific wants and needs in that, which has kind of thrown the legislature a little bit into turmoil over that. So, Shelley, you want to give us your take on what happened with this and what do you think will be the outcome, as the governor has until, I think, the 14th to sign it, to make or veto it one way or the other. But he has voiced his displeasure on it. So what's your take on what's going on and what do you think is going to come from that?
The day of the concurrence vote, I mentioned on the floor that after the vote, the ball would be in the governor's court, and that if he decided to play hardball, I would be on his team. So I said that right out of the gate. I was doing that too, wanted to vocalize that to be an example to the members in the House majority who concurred with the bill, to realize that, it could be a better bill. And I think it's thrown some of the folks off that have been here for a number of years, because we haven't had a governor really probably since Wally Hickel and Jay Hammond who's really taken this very strong approach. But it is within our process. He does have the constitutional ability to do what he's doing. It's not always done. And, for this governor, this is one area, the area of education, he's very passionate about. He understands the industry and he knows what's going on. You can't fool him on this one. So I am pleased that he's taking a strong stand. I think it's throwing some off, though, that haven't seen that, since they've been serving, they haven't seen that kind of strong stand by a governor. But it's totally within his ability to do it. And I think it's good because, as I said a number of times last year, as the bill to raise the BSA was on our side, this is a golden opportunity. We've been given a silver platter because the request for more funding needs to be paired with looking at the learning outcomes. And we would be, and in fact, the 2007 ruling, Moore versus State of Alaska, Michael, and I passed this out on the floor last May, and I've been mentioning it was in an article I recently did. That ruling actually says, listen closely, if there's a substantial majority of kids who are not reaching proficiency over generations, it is the state's obligation, their constitutional obligation, to step in and remedy the situation. And that includes redistributing funds. So, and actually in our Title 14, our education statutes, we have given DEED authority to do this intervention. So the schools are going to be under scrutiny if a BSA increase goes through. And if they fail to improve learning outcomes, I expect this governor, this particular commissioner, they understand this. I've had conversations with the attorney general, with the commissioner, with the governor. I believe they are at the point where they could actually be sued. We could be sued if we don't get the kids back on track. So it's pretty fascinating. But the options that the governor wants are the kind of things that, one shoe doesn't fit all children, right? So children have different learning styles. Correspondence, it can be a better option for a family. A charter school can be a better option. These things are important. The READS Act, which I first, I was a big proponent of that, because if a child can read by third grade, their chance of being productive citizens is a lot greater, right? It's just necessary. But I actually made the mistake because I thought what we did would be helpful because it would give money to the districts to help those struggling students. But it dawned on me that, you don't want to reward deficiency, because the way it's written right now, $500 per each deficient student in K through third grade, the district would get $500. So you're actually incentivizing that they have deficient kids. That's not the way to do it. So I've been in touch. Take the money for that and just distribute it based on a per student basis. That makes sense. You're not incentivizing bad behavior.
Well, what kills me is they keep talking about per student funding, per student funding. All it's about the students, it's about the children. But again, there's no mandate to make sure that this money ends up in the classroom. This money just goes into the fund and they do it whatever they want. They expand administrations, they do buildings, they do all this other kind of stuff. There's no mandate. And secondly, there's no accountability for actually increasing the scholastic achievement. I mean, we spend more than almost any other schools in the nation. We're the top 3, and yet we're 49th in outcomes. And anytime, I know Mike Shower put an amendment in last time around to say, okay, we'll give you the increase, but there's got to be some metrics attached to it. And they, no, can't do that. You can't put strings on it. Why do you hate children? We don't. That's why we want the metrics to show what you're doing with it.
Hey, last May when the bill was in the Senate, Senator Myers, Senator Shower, and I had a half a dozen or more amendments, all trying to direct the funding to the teachers and the classroom, and they were shot down. It was kind of interesting because there were a few, because they just made sense, voted for them, and then they realized the education chair and the rest of the majority were not voting for them, so they started shooting them down. But I had conversations with the chair of education over in the Senate very early on, that unless you're willing to target money, you're not going to get an increase. And so I think what the governor's doing is the right thing. There are the votes to uphold a veto. And so, and then the internet funding also, there is some flexibility, but if they want that, they're going to have to work with the governor. He has very specific ideas of things that he wants to help with the charter schools, to fix the READS Act money. By the way, that READS Act money would definitely make it into the classroom. So that's a good provision. It just needs to be restructured so we're not rewarding and incentivizing districts to keep kids at a deficient level. When most schools start in August, they do the student count in October, and you want right in August, you want them to start helping that child. They would be incentivized to wait until they can put in their numbers to get that 500 per kid. So we need to restructure that. So this is a time. I think this is a governor who wants to tackle the problem that's been facing us for years. And here's another thing. Of course, we know healthcare costs have gone up in inflation. So yeah, the districts have had that. But a lot of people don't realize our statutes allow DEED to audit the district books at any point, and to intervene, withholding funds, redistributing funds. And one of the amendments, I believe, one of the additions is to have a school district checkbook online so we can see how the districts are spending the money. A little transparency there would be a positive thing. I think that we'd start to see more of the money being directed to the classroom. Teacher bonuses, oh my gosh, that is so huge. There is research that shows that money just generally given to a district does not correlate with student improvement. However, money directed to teachers does. Right now, there's been a national shortage of teachers for years, and we've been hearing the districts whine and complain about that for years, way back when I was education chair. It is still a real problem. I remember Bryce Edgman telling me when I was education chair that there was 120% turnover in his district. It's like, how could it be 120%? It's because some teachers don't even last a whole semester. They don't even last a year.
Right. No, I mean, this is an issue for sure. I'm curious to see if they change SB 140 or do they add to it, which means more money in the long run. I mean, there's a lot of issues here. We're going to be watching it, though. Shelley Hughes, tomorrow, 1:30, Senate Labor and Commerce. Her bill, SB 173, is up. Shelley, thanks for all you do. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming on board and sharing with us this morning. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Tomorrow, folks, Firearms Friday. It's all coming up, 6 a.m. Don't miss it. We will see you tomorrow. Have a great day. All right, Shelley, any final thoughts before I let you go?
Yeah, and I wish I would have gotten this to your broader audience, but the Anchorage School District just passed a budget that didn't do any, it didn't let go any staff or anything, basically passed a budget that only requires $100 BSA increase. that would keep it afloat. So they just passed something that would work for them. That's only $100 BSA increase. We are making sure people in this building are aware of that, because this whole thing that, oh, we needed 1,400, that they are totally crying wolf. They don't need 1,400. The 680 is actually more than they need. So anyway, I think that's really significant. I was surprised the Anchorage Daily News printed it. In fact, we probably ought to screenshot it, because they might go in and remove that line. But that was astounding to know that Anchorage School District would be fine with $100 increase rather than a 680. Yep. So there's some good information for people to be out there talking about.
All right. Well, Shelley, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on board, and we'll talk with you again here in a couple weeks.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thanks for being part of it today. All right, folks, we are out of time. We got to go back for tomorrow, of course, Firearms Friday. I'm all about that. All right, we're gonna continue tomorrow then. Be kind, love one another, live well. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.
Welcome.
And domestic.